Good job. I'm proud of you. Amazing.
And feel free, if you want to take a picture of this on your phone or something like that, you feel free to take some.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, just for notes wise, it's 1, 2, then crossfire between 1 and 2, then 3, 4, crossfire between 3 and 4, and then 1, 2 again, and then the grand crossfire, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4, everyone, and then you finish it off with 3 and 4. So it's kind of complicated to learn at first, but once you start doing a little more practice, once you watch a round, which you'll have today, later on today, you'll start to gain an understanding of what's happening and stuff like that. So.
Okay. This is our slide about PF jargon. Jargon is a fancy word for debate vocabulary. And these are just some of the basics. So the first one is an abbreviation. It's CX, which stands for crossfire. If you usually see it as CX, we call it cross-X usually. Just means crossfire, means the questioning period, all of those things. You will see that generally crossfires are not written down on the flow, on the piece of paper that we write down, because it's just a time for clarifications and questioning about the case and the arguments, things like that. Your second one is going to be a paradigm. Now, a paradigm is something that the judges will all have on their tab room account. A tab room account is basically the national website for debaters. You get your codes there. You find out who you're going against there when you go to legit tournaments. So you're going to have a little tab called Paradigm on there, and that's basically telling you how the judge views the round, what the judge values, what the judge is looking for within the round. If you go to a Paradigm and it tells you, I really value being nice in round, guess what you're going to do when you go into the round? You're going to be nice in the round. Similarly, if they say they really like speed, then you're going to go in and you're going to give them speed. Because at the end of the day, the most important part of the round is you being able to cater to your judges to make sure that you can get their vote to make your team win. That's the whole point. What I like to tell people, you are not going to convince the team to agree with your side no matter what. So don't even try. You're trying to convince the judge. And that's the most important person in that round. Your third word is going to be speaks. Speaks is short for speaker points, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the judge giving you points based on how well you spoke and how well you did. How well you did during the round. This is ranked 1 through 30. You want to stay above 27. If you go even 26 is kind of like, oh, did I really do that bad? 27 is like where you want to be. Now, you're all novices, so we will go easy on you when you're judging everything, so you guys won't have to worry that much. But we will tell you when you get to varsity and you have things like tiebreakers, speaker points are crucial because you can win or lose the entire tournament based on speaker points. Now your last one is going to be prep, which is short for prep time or preparatory time. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's 3 minutes that you have during the round in order to collect your thoughts, make new arguments, and just make sure that you're ready to be able to say what you want to be able to say. I think they already gave you like a slight breakdown of that, and it's different for every team. So don't feel like you have to use 1 minute 30 before your rebuttal or anything like that. The way that my partner and I did it, she used 1 minute before her rebuttal. I would use anywhere from 1 minute to 1 minute 30 for my summary, depending on if I was first or second speaker, and then Maddie would use the rest in order to do her final focus. So it depends per team. Don't feel like you have to stick to a strict, thank you, a strict schedule for that.
Also, a lot of this strategy stuff. A lot of the strategy stuff really varies between schools, between teams and stuff like that. So Tuba here is from Harrisburg High School, which is just south of Sioux Falls. If you just to know, I guess. I'm from Brookings, so right here in town. Our strategies are pretty different. just to say. So even making these like slides, things like that, we had pretty different strategies. So even if you guys aren't exactly like what we're teaching you here, or essentially don't be, each person has their own style. Find what works for you and do that. But here's just some of the examples that we use, what works for me, what works for Tuba, things like that. So yeah. All right, so there's a little more jargon here. I'll just go through these pretty quickly because you probably won't use a lot of these generally, but just to go through quickly. So there's something called an overview, which is like an optional addition in the beginning of a speech, and it summarizes like the key arguments of the round, or like outlines like a specific argument. So it's usually saved for later speeches. So all this does is it just tells your judge right at the top, very clear, judge, here are 3 main things that we're focusing on in the round. 1, blah, 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 2, blah, 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 3, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about it. And then you go into depth on what you want to actually say in the round. It just makes everything clearer, and that's an overview, essentially. You use it in later speeches as a way to clear things up. You have something called solvency, which is how either pro or con, like their side fixes like some kind of issue or resolves some kind of crisis or conflict or something like that, essentially why you address or solve for a certain thing. You'll learn all of this stuff in like later days as well, as when we're talking about rebuttal and things like that as well. But then you have something called uniqueness, which shows like an evidence that an argument or impact is unique to either pro or the con side. Again, you'll learn more about that in the future. Something called a link. This is very important. What this does is it's evidence that ties a specific impact to your argument. So, and again, these are all very, very broad kind of explanation of what these are. We'll learn all about this later on as well. And then what's topical versus non-topical. So essentially, a lot of the time, some teams may try to make arguments that aren't technically part of the topic or are straying away from the topic to gain like an advantage. Or these are called non-topical arguments. So these arguments, arguments that do fall under this umbrella of the topic are called topical, essentially. Again, something you'll learn later as well.
Please don't feel like you have to worry about all of those right now, because I promise they are not that important. They're only important when you go against really like mean teams who like to run that stuff against you, but I promise it's not that bad. So we're going to move on to case basics. And we're going to do case basics, but we'll probably take a little break here in a short bit, so then you guys aren't sitting here bored out of your minds, because I would hate that. So, case basics. The main part you need to know about case is a contention. A contention is the root of your case, and it's how you format all of your main arguments. Your contentions, you should have anywhere from 2 to 3. You can have singular contentions, kind of a bad idea, generally speaking, but you can have them. So the contentions are, and your arguments are, the story for why you're pro or why you're con. So we give you an example. We affirm the resolution resolved in the United States, social media is beneficial to democratic values. We do so for the following 2 contentions. 1, #MeToo, and 2, Black Lives Matter. So what that tells you is your 2 contentions, you're going to go way more into depth into all of those. So if you go contention 1, Me Too, and then you bring up a bunch of evidence that tells you, hey, look, social media helped influence the Me Too movement so that it became more widespread and more people were acknowledged about it. That's basically what a contention is. It's telling you, hey, social media did this, or this thing did this, and that's why it's good, or that's why it's bad. Same thing for the Black Lives Matter movement. Social media brought awareness to people like Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or things like that. So that's what it is. Your contentions are always going to be revolved around the resolution. That's the thing about uniqueness and topicality, because if your contentions don't relate to this, which is the resolution, you're going to lose. Because the judge is going to be like, what does that have to do with anything? That doesn't make sense. And you'll lose. So we don't want that.
So basic case structure, how it works is, so, Chuba said, like, in the introductions, like, we affirm the resolution resolved. Resolution is essentially the topic. Things like that, all the random stuff you have at the top, just to make it clean and sound good. So you have all that right at the top. You're defining things, maybe a framework on how you're going to look at the round, things like that. Then, as Tuba said, you have your contention. Now, the name of the contention, like Tuba's example, the #MeToo movement, that's kind of the broad argument you're making. Then you have to go a little more in depth, and this is where a little bit of the differences between team strategy comes in, because this is more of a me way of doing it, like a Brookings way of doing it. Harrisburg has a slightly different method, but it's all very, very similar, right? So you have your contention name, and then you have subpoints under them. So these are kind of explaining more about them, why the Me Too movement, justifies democracy, or whatever it may be, whatever the argument may be. That's where you have it, right? This is something called a link chain, which I'll draw underneath the bison here. So first, you have the topic, right? Whatever the topic may be, right? Then you have something that say, okay, so because, let's just say, like the #MeToo movement promotes democracy within its, within its argument or agenda or whatever. That's the link, first of all. Then you have something called a link chain, where you just add a bunch of moving parts. So you say that, hey, because it promotes democratic values that are promoted on social media, they influence people. That's your second link. By influencing people, people become more democratic in their mindset. That's another one. Then you have something called an impact, right? The impact is, why does it matter? So first you have, it promotes democracy. Then promoting democracy on social media brings awareness to people. People become more democratic in their mindsets. Therefore, people become more connected with each other. Let's just say that's the impact. Becoming more connected with each other is good because blank, 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 whatever it may be. That's your impact. So there's a whole kind of chain of arguments, a link chain is what they call it, of arguments, and that's how you make your contentions essentially. So your contentions, you're taking your judge through exactly why they should be voting for your side, right? Each of these contentions are reasons for the judge to vote for you. Usually I have 2 or 3 contentions, and they each have impacts at the ends, or weaved in within them. Then finally, you have your conclusion, and for these reasons and more, we urge a pro or con ballot, whatever it may be. You have your conclusions there. So yeah, basic kind of case structures. You have, your claim, your reasoning, your warrant, or whatever it may be, and your impact. Usually that's how it works. Just like essay you may write for English or whatever it may be. It's very, very similar. So yeah. All right, so let's take a short break, maybe 5 to 10 minutes or so, just to kind of refresh yourself. And then once we come back, we'll talk about the rebuttal.
Before we take a break, does anybody have any questions about anything that I'm covering?
So there isn't necessarily a limit to, the question was, is there a limit to the amount of reasons we can have? There isn't necessarily a limit, but you have 4 minutes. And each one of your reasons has to be pretty well developed, right? Having very loose things doesn't help you because, it's a chain. And what do they say about chains? It breaks at its weakest link. So if you have bad arguments, essentially, very weak ones, because you're throwing, quantity over quality, then your opponent is just going to trash on each one of those and you're going to lose. So quality, but make sure you don't just put all your eggs in one basket kind of thing. So yeah.
Generally, the rule of thumb is 2 contentions, 2 main points that are overall, but it gets a little bit difficult because subpoints can go within. I like to think that usually subpoints are the main arguments because contentions can be so broad overall. I remember, because I debated that social media is beneficial to democratic values one. Literally, our contention name was movements. That's it. It was movements. That's not really a point that you can make, but our examples were Me Too, Black Lives Matter, PAL, things, all of those things. So it depends. Usually 2 contentions 2 subpoints per contention. There are some teams here that will go subpoints A through J. Don't do A through J. Your judge will hate you if you do A through J. Any other questions about cases or rebuttal? No, we didn't do rebuttal. Cases. Okay. I'll call you guys back at like 4:05. If you need bathroom, drink, everything's, I think, down this hallway. I don't know, but feel free to do whatever you want for these next few minutes.
We'll all meet back here 4:05. Dude, it is.
So where would I go to like check out?
Check out. Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah. You said you had to go at 4. 4:30. Oh my God, it's like 79.
I know, it just keeps going up, dude. What?
Guys, get up and go walk around. Like, I doubt you actually want to be in like 80 degrees. So.
I know, I am
It's
sweating.
very humid too. So. Let's go.
But you do you. I'll be in here because I have to watch you. My hands.
It's bad, man. I think it might just be the building.
It could be. You walk in here.
Do you want me to go? I'll go ask.
Hey, do you have like a cases?
Yeah. Do you want to see them? For, wait, what? What? You can talk to me. I'm here to help you guys. If you have questions, I encourage you to ask.
I asked good cases, but we could go into like the
Argue our cases?
no, never mind. Yeah.
definitely have cases. Would you like to talk about Taiwan, West Africa?
It's the weekend and SDSU comes off instead of Let's slowly get hotter.
I hate SDSU. Just kidding.
Uh,
I actually don't.
Oh, we love SDSU, guys.
No,
Go
I
to
don't-
SDSU for college.
I don't hate SDSU. I just don't like being hot because I get angry when I'm hot because I'm sensitive to heat. So I'm like, ugh, and I'm sticky.
You all should go to SDSU, South Dakota State University. Go Jacks!
Go Jacks!
Go Jack!
Acting as if we're going here.
Go Jacks!
I'm gonna go.
Says the man going to Harvard.
That's the irony, because I'm
Yeah.
obligated and forced to say go Jacks.
Yeah, I mean, no, SDSU is not a bad college. It is a good college. It's just air conditioning makes me mad. All right, where's
Yeah, that sounds like a dent and a half. Oh, nice.
where did everybody go? 4:30. You can just head out whenever.
They'll get here, don't worry.
We have 2 minutes here.
In the bathrooms.
You're in the back rooms?
Bathroom.
Um,
Back rooms?
I mean, the hallway's food kind of in the back.
I guess. Also, this is super information packed, so if you guys have any questions, or please feel free to just stop us.
Please
right?
ask.
Like actually. ask.
Because it's hard for us to know what you guys are questioning. Because to us, this is common knowledge. We're like, oh yeah, we know how to do this. We don't know what you guys are thinking. So please ask. Tell us to slow down. Explain anything more. We will, because we just have no knowledge of being novices anymore.
Yeah. 'Cause the thing is, the better the tournament goes for you guys, the more you'll enjoy it. So if the more you understand what we're telling you, the more things you comprehend, the better it is. It'll be way more fun for you guys as well when the tournament comes in the future as well. So.
Okay, we're just waiting for Nikita. Then we can start. Flowing through.
That's hard.
I love
I'm
this.
so bad at that.
I love this drill.
I'm bad at floating.
I would like to think. You want to see my clothes?
Actually, that's kind of bad though, because we're both at.
I'm very
Awesome
proud.
kid.
I'm very proud of my clothes.
That's one flow for one round, or this whole thing is one round?
Yeah.
Or? Let's see. Very fun to crack. What, pro side concept?
Ooh, that's gross.
I don't know.
Alright, where's Nikita?
She went out towards the bathroom.
Hey, how many people are watching the live stream? Nice.
This, stream,
The stream? YouTube. Yeah.
I'm already trying to find it.
Yeah, I think so.
How many people are watching?
No idea. Not exactly sure what the link is, but yeah. We'll see.
Will
You know what channel I'm
Can it be on?
No, I'm not sure what the link or like the channel it is exactly. I'll find out and I'll tell you guys. Where's yeah.
I found it.
Okay.
We're just gonna get started
Okay,
better.
sounds good.
Usually I find the one with the bike.
I found
We just
it.
like go stand up there and
Oh.
see if she comes in.
Oh, found it.
just leave the door a little open.
I left it. The door stopped in the way.
Wait, open it more. So the key doesn't like.
It's
Kill
still
us?
delayed. It's still on case structures.
Oh well, it's fine.
Actually?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
That's fine.
I'll do rebuttal slides and then you do that
Yeah.
summary and I'll just final.
Yeah.
It's probably better than me explaining summary.
Just these four. There's a very specific reason for that here.
All right. And we're back on the live stream. I'm kidding. Okay. So, hello, welcome back everyone. Next up is rebuttal, which is my favorite because I do this. So, yeah. So, rebuttal is a speech which the second speaker on your team makes, right? So, rebuttal is when, you take your opponent's points and drive them into the ground and leave nothing remaining. So, there's one major rule in public forum debate, or any debate that you may do, whether it may be PF or LD, whatever it is. Never leave any point untouched, because in debate, that is the biggest sin that you can possibly make, and you will lose the round if your opponents are, competent. So, any arguments that you forget to respond to, or you run out of time to respond to, that's the most, that most often happens. It can and will be used against you. Because if you don't respond to an argument, that means that you conceded it, which means you agreed to it, which is very, very bad, as you can probably guess. So there's two major ways to respond to an argument. The first way is to refute it, which usually happens by attacking the link that links the argument to the topic or the case or whatever it may be. The second way is to outweigh it, which is usually by attacking the impacts and stuff. Now, we'll cover all of this in future days as well. We have a whole 2-hour rebuttal lecture that I'm sure all of you will enjoy. But yes, that's basically what rebuttal is, how you refute and outweigh. Now, because in rebuttal we have to address every single part of the flow, organization for all of you guys is absolutely key. So you only get 4 minutes to respond to every single argument that your opponent can say in 4 minutes. And they have something to read off of. You don't. Well, not always. So using time effectively is very important within debate. That's why we debaters use something called blocks. Now, blocks are whole responses against arguments that we can anticipate coming across, right? So let's just say the topic of school should start at 9 a.m. instead of 8 a.m., right? What's an argument for it that you may think of that might happen? Well, kids are tired, right? Or anyone else? What do you think would happen? What would someone say why school should start at 9 instead of 8? Yeah.
Sleep benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go off the sleep benefits. That's something a lot of people, if you're presented with that topic, they would run that, right? You would assume so. So, being the smart people that you are, you predict that. And to make sure that you have the perfect responses to that, you write them out in a document or whatever, Google Docs or Word or whatever it may be. You write it out perfectly with evidence and exactly what you're going to say to be efficient, to be effective, and win the round right then and there. So these blocks are extremely concise and can be very powerful if used correctly. The best people, the best second speakers, always use blocks because they're very effective. So yeah.
Next slide. Okay. All right. This is where teamwork shows. So after rebuttal and after that crossfire between the second speakers, that's half the round done. You set up all your arguments, you've defended all your points, you have attacked all of the other people. What you're going to do now is you're going to stick to your arguments and you're going to, we call it pulling them through or extending. You're going to pull those arguments through all of your other speeches. This is something we like to call a narrative, the story that you present in your case. If we're going back to the social media one, your narrative is going to be, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter became more widespread. That's the narrative that you're going to stick to, so you're going to pull it all the way through, all the way until the end of Final Focus. You have to explain in these other two speeches, which we're going to go more in depth about, but summary and Final Focus are speeches that you want to focus on. We won this round, and they lost. Why? For these 3 reasons. Boom, boom, boom. Now, there's a little bit of a time difference. Summary is 3 minutes long. Final Focus is 2. And I'm a little bit biased, but I would like to think that summary is probably the most important speech in the round. And I'm pretty sure everyone in South Dakota and pretty much Nat Circuit can agree that summary is where everything comes down to. Because if you drop something in summary that you weren't meant to, your opponents can turn that on you, and it just becomes a whole mess that you don't want to deal with. So we're going to go to summary. What is a summary? What is it? It's a summary. You're going to tell us everything that's happened in the round so far, and you're going to tell us exactly why you're winning. The main way that you do this is something that South Dakota people call voters or voting issues. There are either 2 or 3 main points that are going to be like, hey, we're winning this because of these 3 main points that are either that our opponents never argued against or they never talked about, blah, blah, blah. Crystallization. When you think of a crystal, what is it? It's clear. So, same thing. Crystallization is going to be you're making the arguments clear on both sides, you're making your points stand out, and you're just making it better for the judge to understand why you're winning. Impacts and weighing. Did we talk about weighing? Okay.
So essentially, I'll just quickly give a quick summary. So weighing is when you compare one person's case impacts or whatever against the other case. So let's just say that me taking Tuba's toy, or let's just say me taking Tuba's mic saves the world, but it brings Tuba sadness. What is more important, Tuba being sad or saving the world? That's weighing. So in the end, the judge was like, okay, let's weigh against Tuba being sad versus saving the world. Saving the world is more important. Although Tuba may be sad, saving the world is important. That's weighing essentially.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different types of weighing you can do. We'll go later into something called weighing mechanisms. Those examples include magnitude, scope, probability, time frame, things like that, which you'll learn all about, I promise. So in summary, you're going to be pulling through your impacts. You're going to be pulling through that weighing because you want to make sure that your impacts and your numbers are on top. Same thing on offense. You want to make sure that the opponents have nothing left on their case. As much as you can destroy, you should destroy. What isn't a summary? A second rebuttal. You aren't going to go up there. I can't even argue that, though. Okay, never mind. You're not going to go up there and just completely attack the other person's case. You're not going to do that. That's not what the summary is for, because your second speaker should have already done that in their 4-minute rebuttal. Don't waste time in this really important speech to just talk about the other side when you should be focusing on your own side and why you are winning. You aren't supposed to bring up any new arguments. So if you're talking about Me Too and Black Lives Matter, and then all of a sudden you bring up Protect Asian Lives, that's not allowed. So no new arguments, just stick to the ones that were presented at the beginning of case. And what isn't a summary? It's not completely defense. So you're not just going to be focusing on your side only. You need to make sure that there's a good balance. Generally, I follow the 1 minute 30 on my side, 1 minute 30 on the other side. That's pretty much nationally recognized. That's what you want to do. You don't want to lean too heavily into one side because then you're going to run out of time, and that'll be bad. Again, your summary should include 2 to 3 points that actually matter, your voters or your voting issues. Issue-based summaries. Issue-based summaries. So anything that you argued about in round, anything that was brought up, things like that. That's what clash is. Clash is when there are arguments on either side that directly go against one another. So if we say, what's a good example of a clash? If we say social media helps world hunger, but Aditya and his team has, oh no, social media actually worsens world hunger. That's clash, and you want to argue on whether like your side is more important or not. So you want to bring those up because those are very important. If you leave those untouched, you're going to lose. And then same thing for big picture. You want to focus overall on why your side is winning rather than doing each individual point because you're going to waste a lot of time like that.
And as Tuba said, summary is probably honest, even as a second speaker I'm saying too. So even with the bias, summary is probably one of the hardest speech, if not the hardest speeches to do in the whole debate because you're covering 20 minutes in 3 minutes, essentially. You're condensing the whole round. You're showing why the judge you won. You're responding to any arguments your opponents have. You're responding to their arguments. You're doing a lot in 3 minutes, which it is definitely not very long. So summary is what essentially makes the round yours. So that's very important. So next we have final focus. This is something second speakers like myself do. This is the last speech in the round that you have. Very, very important. Because although it's 2 minutes, this is your final impression with the judge. This shows you, the judge, why you won the round. So for this, you have to build off of your partner. So you need the first speakers, and you use the same arguments. So for example, if Tuba and I were on a team, and Tuba was first speaker, and she did her summary, and it was brilliant, right? She has 3 perfect points, and she wants to extend those. Now, if I go up there and just say some random thing that has nothing to do with those 3 points, we will lose because that has no connection. Now, what I need to do is I need to take those 3 points and really drive them home. I need to hit them home and clash with my opponent, making sure that our case stands on top. We need to work together, bring the same issues, but make it very, very condensed. And you're looking at the big pictures, not just what's important in the round or like what's left out, things like that, but why it's important, why you win the round. That's weighing. That's when that comes in. And you're essentially showing the judge the most important arguments. You're using clash, impacts, weighing, and you're using like the most ground you can possibly get while being consistent with the summary speak. So you have to be incredibly efficient, right, for all of this. So what you do is something called signposting, which is like kind of differentiating from which contention or piece of evidence from which like contention or speech you may be. So essentially, you have to be clear about, judge, let's extend my contention 1, subpoint B of whatever it may be, right? Not only do you say that, you say, next, this is important in the round and it wins us the round because blah, 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 right? So you need to show not only why your opponents lose, but why you win. That's what final focus is for. Summary does both of those. You show why you won. That's very, very important, and it doesn't happen a lot. So I want to make sure that you guys do it right. And again, the rhetoric kind of thing, we win, and it's not they lose. And also, this is a Tuba edition, be a little sassy, because that kind of drives up, don't be like overly sassy or overly aggressive or mean or anything, obviously not, but you need to drive the point home. Right? That's the essential end goal. You need to win the round. And that's how you win the round. So yeah.
The way that I'm usually sassy is by asking rhetorical questions. Like, like what's a rhetorical question? I'm trying to think. Like, why would social media be bad if we got so much acknowledgement about police brutality within the United States? That's like something I would say in the middle of round. Like, why do we care? It doesn't matter. Our impacts are clearly better. I get aggressive, but not too much to the point where it's mean. We'll have a whole thing about debate ethics and everything. So please make sure you're not making any of your opponents cry. I have done that. It's not a good feeling. So just be chill.
So I guess I can also explain what I do normally. So to that sass factor or whatever it may be, I kind of go the route of like like strategy kind of thing. So I like go to the judge and say, Judge, look, at the end of like this whole final focus thing, the last few seconds, like, Judge, look, we have blank, 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 blank on our side. They have nothing, absolutely nothing. We easily win the round right then and there. That the fact that they have absolutely nothing for themselves. Like, you know, it's sassy, it's a little mean or whatever, but if it's true, it's true. And like that's how you can win rounds. It's just like prove to your judge that, hey, there's no other side that you can even take. So yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to flowing because that's public forum. Yay! You learned all about it. Woo!
The formats.
Any additional questions? Because now is the time to ask if you don't understand what public forum still is. We will help you. Okay. We're going to move on to flowing. The game is not right now. I don't know why this slide is in here. We're going to explain what flowing is first. Flowing is writing. Because you're not going to be able to memorize everything in the round. So what you have is called a flow. You're going to write the main points of the argument on a sheet of paper. Depends on what type of paper. I use a legal pad, but it depends. Flowing, the main point of flowing, it has to be shorthand. Because you are not going to have time to write down every single thing that your opponents are saying. If you do, you're going to waste a lot of time and you're going to miss a lot. And that can lose you the round. Obviously, the point is to be able to keep a record of what your opponents are saying so that you can understand their speeches and so then you have the ability to refute those points that they say. These are main tips to remember how to flow nicely, or why you should flow nicely. You understand their speeches when you flow nicely. There are several studies that tell you writing things out help you with your memory better than just hearing it. When you have a flow, you can ask better questions in Crossfire. You can maybe even ask things that contradict themselves in their own cases if you see that happening, all because you're writing it down and you see it in front of you. Another thing, you can keep your later speeches organized and accurate because you can just go down the flow and see where everything is, and you can remember what was attacked and what was left untouched. This last one is the biggest point of flowing. Because if you can remember anything that was left untouched, you can pull that through and that singular thing can win you the round, depending on the judge that you have. So it's very, very key that you take note of what good flowing is and how to do it. We're going to be teaching you that.
All right. So flowing is essentially like taking notes on what's happening in the round, and it's usually organized by speeches. So we'll give you a little like few examples here. So essentially, what the strategy is, or what people usually do, is you use paper that doesn't have lines. Except she didn't do that, but normally people usually do that. They use paper without lines because it's easier to stay organized, whatever it may be, right? Usually dedicate, and this is what I do, right? This is completely different than what she does. Again, strategy difference, but I think it's easier to do this. But you dedicate one side of the sheet of paper to, at least one side of the sheet of paper to one side. So like the pro side. And then when you want to go to the con side, whatever the con's case is, you flip the paper and you have the con side of the flow on the other side, right? So since in speeches you spend half and half usually of your time, you can like flip the sheet and that's how you kind of organize your speech or whatever it may be. So yeah, and the best way to get better at flowing is to practice flowing debate rounds on YouTube, or we have a practice debate that's happening today that we all are urging you, or will make you essentially required to flow it. And although you may not know how to do it well now, you will learn eventually, and by the tournament, hopefully, you guys will be able to do it very, very well.
Like this is an example of what my flows look like. This is one round. So not a lot of people do this, but my partner and I like to do pre-flows. So these are our cases that we've already written down on this little sheet of paper so that we can just stick it into our legal pad and just go off of that. You do whatever you want to do. I have people write it down before they're around. I have people just memorize it off the top of their head. sections like this, and it goes inward. So this is the con side of the flow, and then this is pro, and then the rebuttal goes here next to the cases, and you guys can't really see it, but there are little arrows that tell you, oh, you need to pull this through, you need to pull this through, or there are little arrows and little sections that tell you, oh, this is a thing a certain response to this. This is how organized it should be. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but you should know where everything goes, and you should be able to read what you're saying.
Yeah, and the basics are, it's basically the same, right? As Tuba explained, this is the con side of the flow, that's the pro side of the flow. Instead of doing it on 2 sheets of paper, she just did it in one and split it in half, basically, right? So a lot of this is very similar. Just find a process that works for you. This is kind of how I make my flow. It's very messy, my handwriting at least. But yeah, so you have the contentions, that we talked about before. You have the subpoints that you list out, and you have your impact that you're listing out. Very, very brief. And as you can see, I have like arrows and stars and like lots of abbreviations. That's what you should do, because you're trying to write what your opponent is saying at the same time as your opponent is saying it. So you have to be very concise with it. So yeah. All right.
Okay. Same thing. This is just another example of a flow. This is
how I usually flow. So
yeah. This is generally how I flow too. It's just like smushed into like one little itty bitty section. But nonetheless, pretty much everyone flows the same. This example is probably even more detailed than what is normally written down on a piece of paper. I'm not gonna lie. So again, little shorthand techniques, but as much detail as possible. So drawing symbols, like if something is increasing, if you say something's increasing poverty, you can draw an up arrow and shorten poverty to POV. That's something that I do.
Up arrow, and then star for important things that they may bring across, stuff like that. So very simple.
Yep. Circling anything that's very important, crossing something out. Percents, obviously you use the percent symbol. Any numbers you probably want to get. Like, you should write down as many numbers as possible if they bring them up in case. Try to write every point, not everything, every point. Just main things like that. Essentially, you're trying to keep track of all the opponent's arguments so you can answer them. Again, that helps you in summary and your final focus. So this is your example. Your definitions at the top, usually you don't have to flow definitions, but they might be important, so you can just write DEF, definitions, whatever it is. C1, what do you think C1 stands for? Contention 1. And even education is too long to write. I would write ED. Like, that's my shorthand. C1 ED. That's how I know it's education. A, can't learn without school.
Also, this is something I wrote like a while back. It's kind of cringy. But, like,
It's okay. It's an example. It's fine. So, can't learn without school. Pretty short, right? Average 8 months behind. Even months, I would shorten to MO. Like, anything you can shorten, you should shorten. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, you should just shorten it. Because I promise you, if you keep going, you're going to lose so much time. Again, with the arrow, poverty rate increases, obviously. Big sad. Increasing poverty is pretty sad, I would think. I mean, I would hope nobody's advocating for poverty. So that's your impact. That's how we want to flow. Contention 2, Prasoon can't go to school. Even that is a pretty long thing to handwrite. You can just say, Prasoon no. Or like, Prasoon no go. Something along that. So anything you can shorten, you should shorten within that. Nuclear war? Why did you write nuclear war? But this is kind of what it looks like. I'll pass around that sheet so then you guys can look through that and see what mine kind of looks like up close, but it's generally what it is.
and you see, so like, okay, the examples are kind of weird, but you see like how I flowed, or how most people flow, is you flow like the chain of arguments, the link chain. So the link chain is that, hey, Prasoon, which is one of the camp directors, will fail physics. that's bad for the future because he wants to be an engineer or whatever, right? Next thing is like nuclear war will happen, which causes death, which is very sad. I'll be sad, so everyone will be sad. You see that like kind of, well, the example is bad, but like you see the kind of chain of arguments that you have that eventually all boils down to a big, big impact, i.e. nuclear war and everyone being sad, right? So it's something like that, something based on that. So yeah. All right, so again, this is a real world like example or whatever. So this is actually one of my very old cases of how I like back from like 9th grade. This is one of my cases that I had, right? So we have the contention one being climate change, subpoint A, climate change leaves minority groups particularly vulnerable, etc. How you flow that is, and this is pretty detailed for a flow too, is you have your contention name up top, if you can see the colors in blue, then your subpoint tagline it's called, which is like this thing, abbreviated as much as possible. So climate change harms minorities. And then you have like more information about the card that's important to note. So you have the number especially is important to flow, what city it's in, what it hurts, things like that, right? Same thing with all of these, right? You have these subpoints that go underneath the contention. That's how you flow case. This is just one of the examples, or the many examples, essentially. So yeah. Oh yeah, I'll just talk about this quick. Okay, so pre-flowing is what Tuba talked about a little bit ago. Pre-flowing is essential. Like you, oh sorry. Okay, pre-flowing is not optional, all right? Period. Do like pre-flow your case. What that means is just as Tuba showed, I do it a similar way, just a little bit different. But before you go to the round, you have your case already written down in a column on your sheet. That makes it so that when you're in the round, you can draw arrows to every argument that your opponent responds to, what they respond to, and where. That way, you know exactly what they responded to, what they responded to with, and how you're going to attack it. Right? So pre-flowing is pre-flowing. So do it before the round, before everything else. Make sure you're ready. That's one of the ways to prepare for how to do things. So yeah, and it takes like 5 minutes max, so no excuses whatsoever. You have to do it.
Maybe when you're varsity, you guys can go and just like go off the top of your head, but
No, don't do it. Don't do it. No excuses.
I wouldn't recommend it personally, but I've had so many teammates that just do it off the top of their head, and they were really good at it. So, but pre-flowing, important.
All right.
Okay. Shorthand. We already kind of talked about this. Again, abbreviating and everything. So in that climate change case, you might have seen FF or CC, fossil fuels, climate change, things like that, because we don't have time to write out fossil fuels or write out climate change. So if you know those abbreviations, use those abbreviations. Again, this is called shorthand. It's to get as much information onto the paper as you can without wasting too much time. It doesn't matter. You do not have to follow a specific set of shorthand rules. You do whatever is comfortable for you, because at the end of the day, you are the one that's looking at your flow to see what you can gather from it. So it should make sense to you. Abbreviate as much as you want. I recommend abbreviating literally everything that you can, because you can move faster and move along with the round that's happening. And then it'll look weird. Like when you look at it, you guys saw my flow. It looked weird, right? It's weird. It looks like another language because it basically is. You're shortening everything. You basically don't know what you're saying until you get into that round, but it makes sense to you in those 45 minutes that you are debating. And that's all that matters. Let's look at an example.
All right, yeah. So the one on the, yep. So the one, I think actually both of these are pursuits, which you like heard before. But so this is kind of how he does it. This is the entire round. This one is how he flows, right? So why it's so important to flow very methodically is, as you probably saw in Tuba's cases as well, these are contentions, and then he draws a bracket and then puts all his responses that he has, numbers them onto what he responds to. So in round, what he would say in rebuttal is, let's look at their contention one of whatever that, because I can't read it, whatever that may be, right? Group it all together. I have two responses. First, reads whatever he wants there, and then second, this, right? Then let's go to their contention two. Group it all together, two responses, right? So when you do that, it's very, very organized. And not only for you is it organized, but for your opponent and your judge, specifically, which is very, very important. That way, if Prasoon, for example, he's a good debater, so he wouldn't do this, but if he missed this contention, if he missed responding to that, well, the opponent would easily just say, look at the entire contention 2 or whatever, extend that through the round. My opponent did not respond to it at all. It's conceded. That wins the round because blank, blank, blank reason, right? So being organized is absolutely crucial. And as Tuba said, having shorthand is very important as well. So drawing arrows and stuff helps you do that. So, yeah.
Wait. Thanks.
Oh, I can actually do this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So flowing rebuttals is, as I explained before, it's a bit of a technique that you just need to get used to. So primarily, you use arrows. So for example, let's look at this, if all of you guys can see this. So if this is the case that's proposed to you, me as a second speaker, what I would do is I would say, okay, let's look at their contention 1, group it all together. I have like a block that's already made. So what I would do is have my block name, so like answer to, like me too. Okay? So I'd have answer to me too, and then I just put the number of responses. Let's just say I have 5 responses, right? And I group it all together and say that block. That's why blocks are so easy, so then I don't have to think of random arguments and write them down. Then, once I get in the round, what I'll do is, on my laptop, I'll have all these blocks already pre-prepared. So when I get to the time to speak for my rebuttal, I'll say, let's look at their contention 1, group it all together. I have 5 responses to this. And then look at my computer and literally just read the block. And it's extremely concise and effective. So through drawing arrows like this, even throughout the round, like if they dropped some argument or didn't respond to it, using arrows and stuff is very, very important. And that's kind of how we flow rebuttal. And, you know, drawing columns, spacing it out, that's very, very useful. So yeah. Basically, that's how you flow rebuttal. Again, we'll get into more of it later, especially when you learn how to do a good rebuttal, you'll understand how to flow it as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
An example of how rebuttals would be flowed, essentially.
Yep. I mean, it's a lot different online than it is handwritten. Handwritten is better. You will do handwritten during this camp. You have no choice. This is probably what will be most beneficial to you guys during this week, is doing it in columns like this. It'll make it easy so you can just go straight across the paper instead of like going inward like I did, or just like having arrows go down. This will probably be your best bet, but if you do want to try any other styles, feel free. We're not here to stop you. Do whatever you feel is comfortable. But maybe start with this one. We're going to do a game that I've prepared. This is my favorite flowing game of all time. Like, it's lovely. It's my favorite. So it's a card game. I'm going to read you 10 cards from like a deck of cards, and you're going to have to write down as many cards as you can. I'll start slowly, and then I will constantly increase my speed until it is unfathomable how fast I can speak these cards. So please get a new sheet of paper in your notebooks. Whatever.
Yeah. And get ready to write fast. Think about what you want to, like maybe abbreviations or shorthand to try to win. Because the winner gets prize. So, incentive. Prize. Incentive.
Yeah. Okay, is everybody ready? Yeah. Okay. So, this is your first set of 10. King of clubs, 7 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, 9 of spades, 6 of spades, 3 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 2 of diamonds, queen of spades, 5 of spades. That's it? Did everybody get everything?
Okay. How many of you guys got? All right. So the first one is King of Spades.
No, King of Clubs.
Or King of Clubs. Sorry. So how many of you guys got that? King of Clubs. Raise your hand. That's the first one.
Okay. Who got 7 of Hearts?
That's the second one.
7 of Diamonds? 9 of Spades? 6 of Spades? 3 of Hearts? 9 of Diamonds? 2 of Diamonds? Queen of Spades? 5 Spades.
Nice. Did anyone get all of them? Nice.
Solid.
Good job. All right. Incentive time.
Just throw it. Chuck it across the
We
room.
got strawberry, cherry, raspberry, or lemon.
Raspberry.
Chuck it. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Okay.
Good job. I don't think I could have even done that. So congratulations.
This is my favorite flowing game of all time. I've been playing this since I was 14. Every year. Every day. All right. Are you ready for your next set? Okay. 7 of Hearts, 9 of Hearts, Ace of Clubs, 8 of Clubs, 9 of Clubs, 10 Hearts, Ace of Spades, 6 of Clubs, 3 Heart, 5 Clubs.
And keep your hands, like everyone start with their hands raised. Let's do this a bit differently so it's better. Everyone keep their hands raised, and the second you get one wrong, put it down. All right? Yes. Wait, no. Like, okay.
Okay.
Keep your hands raised starting off, everyone, and then once you get something wrong, put it down. All right? Last one standing wins.
Wins.
Right, go.
7 of Hearts, 9 of Hearts, Ace of Clubs, 8 of Clubs, 9 of Clubs, 10 of Hearts, Ace of Spades, 6 of Clubs, 3 of Hearts, 5 of Clubs.
Wait, like if you get one wrong, just put it down and don't lift it back up. Yeah. Did anyone get all of them?
Those 4.
These 4? Dang, you guys got way better at this. Good job.
We have no candy left after this. We have one more. I'm going to chuck random ones at you. That wasn't for you, but anyway. Oh! I'm so... you throw this one. I'm not coordinated enough for this. Oh well. Alright,
Nice.
are you ready for your next set?
Now this is getting progressively harder. So think about what you may be doing differently to try to get more, etc. Yeah.
Ready? 3 of Hearts, 2 of Clubs, King of Hearts, 4 of Diamonds, 6 of Clubs, 10 of Spades, 8 of Clubs, 3 of Diamonds, 6 of Hearts, 7 of Spades.
Very hard. I
Alright.
want to know what you're doing because you're writing them down very fast. I'm curious.
With King of Clubs, KC, right?
Ah, interesting. Good.
Alright, everybody start with your hand raised. Put it down when you get one wrong and don't put it back up. 3 of Hearts, 2 of Clubs, King of Hearts, 4 of Diamonds, 6 of Clubs, 10 of Spades, 8 of Clubs, 3 of Diamonds, 6 of Hearts, 7 of Spades. No
Who lasted the longest?
I think Shahid did. Or was it?
Do you know who it was?
I don't know.
I got us to 10 of spades.
Did anyone get further than that? 10 of spades?
No.
Did?
No.
Okay. Did anyone get further than 10 of spades? No? Did anyone get 10 of spades? Anyone else? You did?
I got,
Ah, interesting. Alright, so we won't give any candy out this round, but
We only have one piece left.
yeah, so fight to the death, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Alright, are you ready?
Is this last or like do we have a few more?
We can do 2 more. I can go faster.
Okay.
I love doing this game, guys. Okay, ready? 6 of Hearts, 8 of Clubs, King of Clubs, King of Diamonds, King of Hearts, King of Spades, 7 of Clubs, Ace of Clubs, 9 of Spades, 8 of Hearts. Oh, yeah, they are. You know what? I should do a practice case with them. See, just no, not so they can flow, just so they can see how fast it actually is.
Oh yeah.
'Cause
It's
we
like-
have
okay,
time,
It's
dude.
like slightly faster than okay. So your case, you're also saying words rather than like pure exactly what you need to write down, right? So case flowing is gonna be easier. You talk at basically that speed, so like slightly faster than conversation tempo. So yeah. That's why flowing is important. In shorthand especially. So yeah, okay, yeah. So Tuba's gonna read like do a few more rounds and then we'll show you an example of how we read case and stuff. Okay.
6 of hearts.
Oh wait,
Oh.
you haven't done the scoring.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm.
Wait,
Say-
did you not? Oh.
This
oh,
is
oh,
the-
oh,
this
oh,
is the
oh,
set.
yeah, keep your
Raise your
Sorry,
hands.
sorry.
6 of hearts. 8 of clubs. King of clubs. King of diamonds. King of hearts. King of spades. Okay. Any
Nice.
quarter
What
one.
did you get? Rashi.
King of spades.
7 clubs.
7. That was the next one. That's
Good
good.
job. That was very
You
good.
get the last strawberry one. If I can chuck this correctly. That was bad, bro. Bad. All right, we're gonna go one more time, and I'm going to go insanely fast. Okay, here's the thing. You are going to hit teams that go insanely fast. I don't go insanely fast.
Not very many. do.
They don't go insanely fast because we're nice people and we want to be able to enjoy the round. But there are some people that will go insanely fast. That's a technique called spreading. Don't spread. Nobody likes spreading.
I'll get
Nobody.
more to that later.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready? Ace of spades, 4 of diamonds, 2 of clubs, queen of hearts, jack of clubs, queen of spades, 4 of spades, 8 of clubs, 3 of hearts, 10 of spades.
All right.
You did hear a 3.
You did hear it.
All right, hands raised. Ace of spades, 4 of diamonds, 2 of clubs, queen of clubs, diamonds. I mean, sorry, that was wrong.
You won, right?
I think so. We don't have any more
Yeah, we
candy.
don't have any more candy.
You just get victory, I guess. Yay!
All right, let's go, guys. Let's go. Applaud.
Yay!
Yay! Congratulations.
We will be doing more of those flowing drills throughout the entire week. Not necessarily this one, but we will have more for you to practice with because flowing is very, very important.
Very humbling, yeah? Yeah, definitely. All right, so Tuba's gonna read one of her old cases just to show you like a gist of kind of how it sounds and what you might have to like write down and stuff like that too. Are you gonna read like a contention or something?
I don't know. I'm thinking about doing Taiwan since I just wrote that one.
Okay.
Do you want me to do pro or con? I think.
Just do. It doesn't matter. Just do one contention and just have it close.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna do. You know, let's do China. I feel like that's an easy one to kind of understand. Okay. So this is one contention from like nationals that we just went to 2 weeks ago. The topic is. What is the topic?
It's like
The United States should establish a comprehensive bilateral trade agreement with Taiwan.
yeah, kind of complicated, but
Very complicated. Basically, it's just saying the United States should establish an official trade deal with Taiwan. Basically what it is. So my argument on this one, I was on the con, so I said, no, we shouldn't do that. This main argument is going to be about China. We're going to flow this as best as you can. So new sheets of paper.
she's not gonna read it any faster or any slower than she. She's gonna read
Yeah.
it at the normal pace at which she normally does. And yeah, flow as much as you can in the ways that we showed you, preferably, in the ways that we showed you, and try your best. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone ready? Contention 2, retaliation. CRS in March 2022 outlined since 2016, the Taiwan government has offered incentives for firms to diversify to other parts of Asia, and since 2018 has encouraged some onshoring in response to U.S. tariffs on PRC goods and growing risks in China. Relations soured in 2014 when a proposed services deal led to protests in Taiwan and suspended a legislative vote on it. Al Jazeera 21 highlights, China claims democratic Taiwan as its own territory, to be taken by force if necessary. Beijing has increased the pressure on Taiwan, sending fighter jets into the island's air defense zone. The U.S. has meanwhile stepped up support for Taiwan, approving new arms sales and sending high-level delegations. Glacier 2022 furthers. The CCP views the United States' longstanding support and defense of Taiwan as interference into domestic Chinese affairs. Perhaps most importantly, by taking Taiwan, the CCP would eliminate a robust Chinese-style democracy and market economy that challenges its own model of authoritarian governance. G1 in 2021 asserts conducting trade talks with Taiwan instead of the Chinese mainland is blatantly assuming that Taiwan is an independent economic entity with a separate political oversight. In other words, trade deals are tantamount to recognizing Taiwan as an independent country. McDonald continues, Zhao accused Washington of encouraging sentiment in Taiwan in favor of declaring formal independence, a step Beijing has said previously would be grounds for invasion. The impact is war. NPR in January 2022 observes, Qin accused Taiwan of walking down the road towards independence and added if the Taiwanese authorities emboldened by the United States kept going down the road for independence, it will most likely involve China and the United States, the two big countries, in a military conflict. The Wall Street Journal, May of 2022 reports, President Biden said that the U.S. would respond militarily to defend Taiwan if China tries to take it by force, sparking uncertainty over whether the U.S. was moving away from its long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity as the White House looks for ways to check Beijing's growing clout in Asia. This would impact not only Taiwanese individuals, but American soldiers as well. The Hill in January 22 reports, if China succeeds in taking the island, leaders in Beijing would have to know that the United States would be unlikely to just get on with conducting business with a reunified China. China would have revealed itself as an aggressive and fundamentally hostile actor. It would have killed tens of thousands of Taiwanese in the military effort, 10,000 or more Americans as well, with preemptive attacks. The United States and its allies hardly would be inclined to take such a defeat passively. For these reasons, we negate.
So obviously, very hard right away, but it will get much, much easier. Also, flowing their cases, just in my experience or whatever, is like a bit harder than flowing like tagline wise. You know what I'm saying? Because that one has like the arguments built in, weaved in within like the evidence that they're using, right? While like at least the way that I usually do it is like I have like a tagline or whatever, then I have evidence with it. So each person does their cases differently, so it's really important to have diversity, how you know how to flow things. Yeah.
We usually don't do like a lot of taglines, especially for this topic. Especially for this topic, it was really, really hard because everything was just so jumbled together. You can't really separate it. But yes, Aditya is right. Our cases, like I've had people tell me that our cases are hard to follow and flow because we just have so much information packed into it. But that's what a case should be. So, yeah. It'll get easier. I promise. Did anybody get? Yes. It depends which, you know what? We should talk about judges. Let's talk about judges before we move on. There are many different types of judges. So there's something we call tech judges, which tech people prefer using the debate vocabulary like, what's the word, magnitude and cross-apply and extend and those things. That's what a tech judge does, technicality. There's a lay judge, which means they have never heard of PF, they've never heard of public forum, they don't know what debate is, anything like that. And there's circuit judges, which are more nationally known, not really in South Dakota that well, but more nationally known. And then there's like your everyday coaches and mentors or ex-debaters sometimes will be your judges. So it honestly depends. That's why your paradigm for your judges is very, very important. If they don't have a paradigm, it's likely that they're a lay judge and they don't know anything about PF at all. But in my experience, every single one of our judges has been able to follow our cases, generally. I mean, yeah, they've been able to follow our cases. I mean, we've won so many rounds with that I think it's okay. But then again, it's very important that like your case just lays the foundation. The actual debate happens afterward. So if you explain in your summary, this narrative, we should pull through this contention because if we establish a trade deal, China is going to invade Taiwan. If we keep pulling that through, that's going to catch the judge's attention more than what's on their paper, if that makes sense. Because they're listening to you as opposed to writing it.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I think that's covered pretty well.
Okay.
So, any other questions? No. Alright, here. So I have a quick idea. So just to like diversify it a little more, get a little more experience with flowing, I'll read one of my cases, one of my contentions, and that way you'll see two different styles, and you make sure that you can flow this. So new sheet of paper, and then we'll start doing that in a bit. Yes.
What is a circuit judge?
Yeah. So essentially, that's not something you necessarily have to worry about, like the lingo or whatever. A circuit judge is usually someone who has a lot of experience judging on like the national level, you know? So usually they're very experienced or they've heard tons of varieties of arguments. So they're used to like weird, quirky arguments that people in South Dakota or even Minnesota or like things like that may not run. Minnesota has more, you're from Minnesota, right? Yeah. Minnesota has more circuity stuff. So you will have circuit judges. Maybe not so much in South Dakota or a lot of other places, but Minnesota for sure, you'll have circuit judges and like weird, like different arguments that you may not hear. So yeah.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So yeah. All right. New sheet of paper. New whatever. New mindset. Everything. So I will start reading one of my contentions, which is the resolution is about Turkey's or the country is obviously that Turkey's membership is or isn't beneficial to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO. What I'm saying is that it isn't. Yes. Oh, yeah, okay. So my side is what I'm trying to say is that Turkey is bad for NATO. My reason is regarding NATO's political ideology. So, yeah.
I review your case misspelled Turkey.
I guess I did. Yeah. Back then, I guess I did. Because it changed its name. Anyway, okay. Everyone ready? Cool? Yes. Yes. And this one has taglines. So just a disclaimer or whatever. All right. Contention 1, political ideology. A, Turkey is becoming less and less democratic. From Freedom House, an organization that ranks nations on democratic ideals in 2020, says Turkey has shown growing contempt for political rights and civil liberties. It has pursued a dramatic and wide-ranging crackdown on perceived opponents since an attempted coup in 2016. Constitutional changes adopted in 2017 concentrated powers in the hands of the president. The impact of COVID-19 on the already shaky economy has given the government new incentives to suppress dissent and limit public discourse. End quote. Freedom House ranks Turkey as the country with the second largest 10-year decline in democratic values and as a, quote, not free country. Subpoint B, Turkey is a dangerous force for instability. From Romano 20, says the catalog of problems Turkey has caused for NATO since 2002 is lengthy and complex. Besides its support for Islamic and radical groups in Syria, Libya, Yemen, and elsewhere, Turkey denied NATO permission to use shared air bases in Turkey against ISIS and threatened to unleash waves of refugees on Europe if the EU dared to criticize the Turkish invasion of Syria. Turkey has become an unpredictable and dangerous force for instability in the region, at odds with the interests of NATO. The government accused Americans of involvement in the 2016 coup attempt and even cut off electricity to the Incirlik base, where U.S. forces maintain several nuclear warheads. Turkey has repeatedly helped Iran to evade U.S. sanctions. In 2015, Turkey shot down a Russian warplane flying along its border with Syria, which threatened to drag NATO into an unwanted war with Moscow. Impact. Turkish authoritarianism gives Russia an opening against NATO, from Cork in a speech from the U.S. Congress in 2019. Says Turkey has scorned NATO's democratic values and is a prime example of how a turn to authoritarianism also means an opening for Russia. Leaders in Turkey have defiantly asserted that they do not have to choose between NATO and Russia, that they can have their S-400s and still have collective defense. That's not what being an ally means. Let us not forget there is a geopolitical contest underway, which includes an assault on our democratic way of life. Russia is our adversary in that conflict, end quote. Now, yes, very hard to flow, but that's one contention. You'll have, like, that again, because at least, yeah, two contentions in this case. So, yes. All right, any questions about that case? Is there something you guys maybe didn't get, maybe didn't understand? Like, how did you guys do, I guess, flowing-wise?
Better or worse than the first case? Which one was easier to flow? Was my case easier or was it a yes? It is yes.
All right. Well, any comments or like questions or something on how to flow, maybe like abbreviations or just in general? Because again, very important skill to have. Yeah? Or not? Yes. How do you get better? Yeah, so drills like the one Tuba showed, do that, and especially listening to cases said at you over and over and flowing. A lot of experience is like really crucial for that. So whether it may be listening to practice rounds, like one of the ones we have today, or like, flowing previous cases by us, or looking up like debate rounds on YouTube and flowing those as well. So experience makes perfect, Yes. No. The reason is in theory, yes, it's exactly what I thought when I was a freshman as well. So the thought process is like, hey, you make your case hard to flow so your opponent can't flow it and you win, right? Problem is, your judge also has to flow. So you have to make the case easy to flow and understand because the judge has to understand it. Because in the end, what you're trying to do is convince the judge about what your argument is. And if you have a really, really hard case to flow, and in your rebuttal, you just say, oh, like, look at this argument. It's completely unrefuted, but the judge has no idea what you're talking about, and it's not even, like, written down, they won't do anything because they think that you actually didn't, like, say it or anything, right? So making it easy to flow, making it very clear is good for you. Although it may give your opponents, like, more clarity on what you're saying, that's a good thing because it also gives your judge more clarity and allows you to beat your opponents. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. We have you until 5:30, so we need to talk more, unfortunately. I know you're sick of us talking, but you get this for a week. Yes.
Do you guys ever suggest using uncommon arguments as in the case to
It depends. I am all for uncommon arguments if your link chain is strong enough to support itself. If you have, like, there was an argument we hit years back where it was talking about welfare programs, Medicare, it's Medicaid. It's Medicaid. Medicaid and SNAP and TANF and all of those things. They said something about liberty. I don't know. It was a bad argument in general, but it was unique, A lot of people will actually do that with women. There are a lot of teams in South Dakota that will try to fit an argument about helping women and feminism into the cases, which, like, everywhere.
Like the national final public forum round was literally that, where a team tried to fit in like gender equality into like comprehensive bilateral trade agreements with Taiwan.
Which kind of sucked, but they did offer a feminist framework, so I was like, whatever. But there are teams that will do that. And I'm all for feminism and women empowerment, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense in those cases. But if you have a narrative and a story that makes sense, and it's like, like it makes sense that China's going to retaliate if the U.S. establishes a trade deal. Why? Because China said they would do that. That's what you want. You need that solidarity to make sure that it's strong enough so that even if your opponent does try to attack it, it won't go down that easily. Because if you have just something that says, oh yeah, women will be helped in Taiwan, okay, and what about it? Like, it depends. You can definitely go for uncommon arguments, but be careful about running them. That's kind of like the trade-off that you have to make is common arguments, strong arguments. Uncommon arguments, iffy. And you'll have to do a lot more research, usually, because they're not super easy to find.
Also, if I can add something, think about it. So what we call like common arguments in debate, the lingo is like stock arguments, the ones that are very, very common, like the ones that we talked about with the example about, I forgot exactly what it was, but like, the first thing, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. wise, what we should do, the first thing that pops into pretty much everyone's mind is sleep deprivation, right? And what effects that has. Obviously, that's the first thing that pops into our mind because it probably is one of the strongest arguments in support of that or against it or whatever it may be, right? So, although they are stock, and a lot of us have blocks against them because they're stock, they're pretty good arguments. So, again, as Tuba said, that trade-off is really important. So, I'll just give a story. also because time-wise, I guess, anyway. So what like when I was a sophomore, I did LD, freshman and sophomore year. There was this, like, topic about nuclear weapons, whether or not we should get rid of them, or like, whether or not we should, like, enact a no first use policy, essentially, which means that the United States, like, can't use nuclear weapons first. So I had the weirdest, wackiest argument, right? I was like, all right, let's make it as weird as possible so people don't have blocks to it or never could even conceive it. Aliens. My argument was that humanity's best, like, weapon and defense that we have is nuclear weapons, and we can use it against, like, an intelligent alien life force that could come and, like, attack us or something, right? In theory, maybe a good argument, not really, but the link there is really, really weak. And the problem with running arguments like that is, although, yes, you will never have blocks against that, probably not, they're pretty weak. And, you know, it's kind of like that balance you have, but if you have a strong argument that you, like, is very unique, that you thought of, it's very, very strong and has a strong link chain to it, run it, because it will be extremely effective. Because the second you catch debaters off guard, they have to rely completely on their, like, own, like, intelligence with that, because they have no evidence to it, and they have to, like, rely on whatever themselves to, like, say it, and they won't be clear with it.
It's a little bit different now than it was during our freshman and sophomore year, because starting junior year, we're able to search up things in the middle of round. Previously, you could not look anything up. If you looked anything up, you would get disqualified. Now you can, because, you know, everything's online usually, and so, especially with, like, COVID and everything, a lot of those bigger places still have online tournaments, so they can look things up. You reminded me, there is one story that I will never, ever forget. The weirdest contention I have ever hit in my life. My junior year, so last year, our, like, quals topic, we went to, like, it was online. So we did this random Texas tournament. They got up there, and it was about West Africa and urbanization, okay? They got up there, and they were like, contention 2, bees. And I was like, bees? Bees. And they had this whole argument about, oh yeah, bees, like, their population goes down with urbanization, they aren't able to produce enough pollen, thus crops aren't getting pollinated, yada yada yada, thus human extinction. Yes, they ran human extinction. And I was like, okay, interesting. It was bad. It's a bad argument. There was a bad link to it. And I got up there in my crossfire, which is what you have to do. I literally was like, how many bees are in West Africa? They didn't have a number. So then I asked, how are we supposed to quantify anything if you can't give us a number of how much bees actually affect the West African agriculture sector? They didn't have a response to that. So that's also kind of a good point, and, like, that's what you want in Crossfire. You have to be like, okay, but how are we supposed to do that? Like, what do you mean? Kind in that sense, kind of being sassy, being like, that's wrong. But yeah, bees. It was an interesting argument. We've also had an argument against happiness. Like, their contention name was happiness. It was really funny. I laughed out loud in the middle of that round, actually. Got docked speaker points, but it's okay.
Actually. Alright, so all these are, like, bad examples, right? I actually have a decent example of, like, a weird argument that was actually turned out to be pretty good. And teammates of mine, Emily and Sampada, state champs this year, by the way, this was last year. Same topic, West African urbanization. Their contention name was chickens. Yeah, it sounds stupid, but their argument was that, like, in West Africa right now, chicken farming has empowered lots and lots of women to to be able to go to education, like, have education and do, like, have more money in the house because they were able to farm chickens at home. Urbanization takes that space away from them, and that makes it so they can't go to school and things like that they were able to because of chicken farming. It sounds weird, but they had the evidence, they had the numbers, they had the stats, they had everything they needed, and it ended up being a pretty dang good argument there. And of course, none of us had blocks to it until they did that tournament, and I think they actually got really, really far in that tournament as well. Maybe even won, I'm not exactly sure. But no one had blocks to it. But after that, obviously, yeah, everyone makes blocks to it or whatever. But running those kind of weird arguments, as long as you have very solid evidence and a link there, link chain, it's very, very effective. So yeah.
We have 15 minutes. This is a Q&A. I am 100% positive you still don't know much about PF, and there are definitely questions going inside your brain, so I want you to ask them. Because this is your time right now to fully grasp what a round is like and what you can do to better yourself in that.
Will there be a little timer for us to see?
You can use your phone. So like what I do is I just have my laptop, which is where I read like my case and like evidence from and stuff. Some people like reading it on paper or whatever. So I just pull out my timer, right? Just a stopwatch usually I do, so it doesn't like ring in the middle of the round. And I just say, okay, is everyone ready? All right, time starts now, and then I start talking, right? So that's what I do.
You should time yourself, and you have to also time your own prep.
Oh, yeah.
Usually, it's important that because the judge is not going to care about timing. You should be doing that yourself.
How does demo round work?
Yeah, so it's going to be exactly like a normal public forum round that you would have. And it's on the topic of the camp this year. The topic is like, I
In the
think,
United
yeah.
States, increasing organic agriculture, the benefits of increasing organic agriculture outweigh the harms.
Hmm? Us two, on different teams, but like us two and then one of the LD kids actually, and the person teaching varsity PF.
So we're actually pretty much all taking different roles. I'm with the varsity teacher over there, but she's the first speaker, so I'm going to be doing second speaker, which I'm decent at, so it's okay. And then LD kid is showing
with
us
me.
PF.
So we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be formatted the exact same as a normal public forum round. We're going to go hard. We're going to have blocks. We're going to have things like that. We made sure that it's going to be exactly what you're going to hear at a higher level of debate. So it should be good, hopefully. Yes.
So, with working like
Cases and stuff? Oh yeah, good question. So let's just pull out the schedule quick.
We have time blocked out for you tomorrow, and so there, like every day starting tomorrow, there are study hall times, case writing times, research times that we have already blocked out for you, so you can have that, to just work on your cases. Speaking of which, we need to do partners. I just realized that.
Oh, true.
We need to do partners.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just gonna ask, is there, do you guys want to choose your own partners? Or do you want us to choose for you? Because I know you and...
Like, does anyone have a partner that's not here right now? You two? Okay. So, you two will be excluded from this. I apologize, but, in advance, I guess. But yes.
So, any choice? Come on, guys. We're trying to be friendly. I'm trying to give you opportunity. But okay, we'll do this. I will assign partners, and if you're seeing that you guys have creative differences, come to us and we will reassign you. Work?
It's very important that you get along with your partner and you both match, because if that doesn't happen, it won't be fun. Okay? And let's all agree right here, zero hard feelings or anything like that, because this is such a subjective activity that the wavelengths need to match so well for it to be like a good partnership. Like if I were to partner with myself, I feel like I would literally hate myself so much. Like I would not have fun at all. So yeah, make sure.
It gets intense. Maddie and I've hit Maddie in the middle.
Maybe not that, but
No, I've like hit her leg, not aggressively, but I've been like, what are you saying? Stop talking. It gets aggressive. You have falling out with your partner, it's fine. But we want you to be comfortable here. We want you to be comfortable with your partners. If you're not seeing that, you need to come to one of us right away. Okay? Okay. Let's have. See, I should have thought this would work.
should we do partners now or just tell them to figure it out for tomorrow?
No, we should do partners now.
Okay.
We can talk at least for the last
That's true.
they have.
All right.
We're gonna do.
Wait, we don't have we have an odd number.
No, he's with his other partner. Everyone else is.
She's also with. Wait.
Oh, you two are partners?
No, she has another
Oh,
partner
you
as well,
have
so it is odd.
Okay, it is odd. Wow. Okay, never mind. Oh, now what? We can't have an average. Oh.
True. It's a little hard. How about we just?
We should ask Lauren. Maybe we can pull one of them off,
Yeah, we have to pull one of them.
or pull one of them down.
One of them is better.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna do. Oh, I'm interested. I don't know what I want to like do. Okay, we'll do Shahid and Porter. Put you two together. Ivan, you'll be with Sega. Nikita, you'll be with.
Oh wait. Beforehand, has anyone done a year of debate before, or something like that? So you have a year of like solid debate. Yeah? No?
You did LD, right? Last year, yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe based on that, we can pull someone up if they did debate before.
Porter and Nikita, you did 1 year? LD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else do a year besides Porter?
Okay.
But you already have Porter, okay. I think we should.
Maybe we should pull Porter up then.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll ask Lauren. You're staying out of the mix for now. Okay, never mind. We'll do Shahid and Cohen. Shahid and Cohen. Ivan, Sega. We'll see you two together. Nikita and Michael.
Cool.
So, you have 10 minutes. Go to your new partner. Talk to them. Porter, come up here.
Like exchange like contact information or something so you guys can talk together about cases and stuff because that'll be important, right? So just exchange like I don't know whatever it may be.
I'm gonna go see if I'm gonna go see if
Sounds good.
Lauren's will teach it.
All right. Alrighty. Well, 1 second. And for those who are live, thank you for tuning in. We will see you guys in a bit for the demo round. Adios.